Welcome back to Stones and Bones. Beowulf and Daenerys Targaryen believed in dragons. As we continue our romp through history, we'll see that they weren't the only ones.
Long ago, there was a hero, a great hero from a sea world of fire and ice, who hears that Ulga, king of the Danes, needs help to defeat a dreaded monster who has seized the king's vassals and dragged them off to be devoured in his den. To prepare for battle, the young hero, in full armor and sword, swims for 7 days and nights in the open sea inhabited by monsters. A powerful storm comes up, and a large group of sea dragons attack. Fighting with all his heart and strength, the young hero kills them all. His name is Beowulf. The young warrior and his men cross the sea. They arrive at Ulga's court, and a great banquet is held in the mead hall. The dreaded monster Grendel comes. A terrible combat follows. Beowulf and Grendel fight to the death. The struggle ends in victory for Beowulf. Grendel sings his shrill death song and reels away to die. With night comes the mother of Grendel to avenge her son. The horrible beast kills the best of the king's men. Beowulf goes on a quest for vengeance. At the edge of the monster's fen, he plunges into the dreary waters. Far below the surface, he meets the hideous beast in her lair and conquers her with the sword of a giant laying at the bottom of the sea. Beowulf is honored by a grateful king, then returns to his home across the sea. 50 years pass. Beowulf is now an old king, but a dragon comes to waste his land. The old hero girds his armor for a final struggle. Beowulf goes down to the dragon's cave. At the sight of the beast belching flame, the vassals of King Beowulf flee in disgrace. The old king fights single-handed, but is weary against the fire and poison of the dragon. At last, one young warrior, ashamed of his flight, returns, and together king and vassal slay the dragon. But Beowulf is mortally wounded. After words of praise that he fought the good fight of life, Beowulf dies. A great mound is built for him overlooking the sea. There he's buried with flame and song. Who among us didn't have to read Beowulf in English class? Epic poem set in 6th century Scandinavia, penned in 8th century Saxon England. The word dragon actually appears in the manuscript. The original poem is lost, but a copy penned around the year 1000, Queen Emma's time, survives. The epic tale of a tragic hero who swims with sea beasts, then dies from fighting a fire-breathing dragon was most assuredly known to Queen Emma, most likely recited by poets in the Saxon court. But to Emma, Beowulf was no tale, for she was descended from Vikings, and to Vikings, dragons were not mythical or magical. They were real. With her Viking blood and her life spent in Saxon England, Queen Emma would have known well the dragons in Anglo-Saxon and Viking art. Great writhing, thrashing serpents in the sea and elsewhere. Nasty creatures, but fascinating. Vikings loved dragons. They call them wom, worms, W-Y-R-M-S in Old English, giant worms that swam the seas in the cold blackness of the deep, more like serpents than worms. Still today, wom is the Danish word for dragon, and found in countless towns and place names across Britain. Those Vikings were all over the place. Wormwood, Wormsley, Wormingford, and Wormhead, or Wom's Head. There's even the Isle of Wormings, son of Worm the snake. Stories come from someplace, and they all seem to say the same thing. Ancient and medieval dragons are described as winged, horned, scaled, serpentine creatures with barbed tails, keen eyesight, and intelligence, quite capable of breathing fire. All cultures, times, places, and languages, people who had no contact with each other, come together to stamp a single image of a single creature instantly recognized the world over. The one creature that brings together the four basic elements: air, water, earth, and fire. Creatures depicted with remarkable similarity by the Chinese, the Aztecs, even the Inuits who live in frozen lands where no reptiles are found. Cited in ancient Babylon, drawn in ancient manuscripts of China and Egypt, and still today, the emblem of China. From a 3rd century Roman officer comes the legend of St. George and the dragon. We find its origin in the 11th century. The creature's description in 14th century artwork fits the baryonyx, bones of which have actually been discovered in the region. At the Temple of Khmer, Cambodia, built in the 1100s, is a carving in stone of a creature that looks remarkably like a stegosaurus, plates standing up on its back and all. The ancient Chinese made offerings to their dragons. In the 1200s, while living in China, Marco Polo wrote of great serpents, hideous to behold, that strike fear into those who see them. In ancient Greece, Aristotle and Herodotus told of winged serpents flying in the sky. In Herodotus' book 2, he wrote, like snakes, reptiles with wings not feathered, but membranous, membranes, like the wings of a bat. Sounds like the creatures in the opening of Jurassic Park 3 going after the hang gliders. Dragons, the most valiant of creatures, proudly displayed on family crests and noble heraldry from ancient time to today. From Disney's evil Maleficent, who transforms into a giant dragon to try and destroy Prince Charming on his way to rescue Sleeping Beauty, to the 60s folk group Peter, Paul, and Mary's iconic ballad, Puff the Magic Dragon. More recently, we see them in The Hobbit, Harry Potter, and Game of Thrones, and the adorable animated film How to Train Your Dragon, which takes place, where else? A Viking village. But dragons don't exist, do they? So why are they everywhere? Art, literature, storybooks, and film. Greek mythology gives us their name, Delakun, which means to watch. Dragons were tasked with watching over priceless treasure. Our Lady with her bones in a box would have known them well from Holy Writ. Like the story of Daniel and Bel the dragon, of St. Michael the archangel lancing a serpent like the one in the Garden of Eden. Old Job tells of a creature that stirs up the sea like a boiling cauldron. No fishhook can pull it, no spear can pierce its armor, a creature without fear. Vikings claimed the most fearsome dragons swam their Nordic seas and stalked their ships. So real, they call their vessels Delakuskippen, the great serpent ships with monstrous dragon heads. Vikings believed that somewhere in the vast ocean there was a remote edge of the world where the sea poured over the brink of the earth and dropped off the water's cliff. Always careful to not fall off the edge, for dragons lurk there. Even ancient maps are drawn with sea dragons popping up in the waters. Vikings didn't only believe in sea dragons, they believed in the dreaded Haugufe, or the Kraken, a huge creature that dwelt off Nordic coast and lurked below the surface of the sea. Sailors would mistake it for land, to their doom. Unearthly, they called it, eyes like no other living thing, wild creatures with great curvy arms that could wrap around a whole ship, a head as big as its body that could shoot out black dye that could blind. Vikings never forgot what shared the sea with them and what lurked beneath them. Dragons, the most famous mythical creatures of all. Or are they? Whatever they are or were, they sure have staying power. Which brings us to the endless fascination with the fabled waters of Scotland's Loch Ness and its lovable legend of an elusive sea dragon that lurks in the cold, murky depths. The Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, as she's affectionately called, assuming it's a she. So where did the legend start? 1,400 years ago, when St. Columba, patron saint of Scotland, was in his boat on the loch, when a large sea creature popped up near him. Columba commanded the fearsome beastie to back off and behave itself. He called it Ichuska, Gaelic for water horse. But it was in the 1930s when Nessie went worldwide. In the more than 3,000 sightings since then, and many outright hoaxes to be sure, they seem to all say the same thing: length, 20 feet or so, dark in color, and fast moving. In 1977, National Geographic magazine interviewed several respected lifelong residents of the loch, Highland-born, Highland-reared, who all spoke of Nessie with endearment. Locals who loved to debunk the phonies, especially visitors who claimed they heard the creature. Nessie is a worm, the locals say with their thick Scottish accents, and worms cannot make noises at all. Sounds like what a Viking would say. But they all welcome visitors. Nessie is great for business. So in case you visit, don't miss the signs with an adorable image of the creature, signs that ask you to please not litter. Look for Nessie, but don't be messy. For the 1977 article, 80-year-old Alex Campbell was interviewed. Soft-spoken, former journalist and bailiff of Inverness, Mr. Campbell still lived in the cottage where he was born. He claimed many sightings over the years. Once, he said, I was looking across the water and saw a terrible upsurge 200 yards distant. Then this huge neck appeared, 6 feet at least, above the water, with a small head that kept turning nervously. The head was just going. This is fantastic, I said. Aye, it was there all right. Then a boat approached, the creature saw it, and swoosh, what a dive it made. One day, Mr. Campbell got a call from the lady who for generations lived in the big house overlooking the loch. Alex, she said excitedly, I've seen him. There was a huge bump in the water, then a smaller bump. Seconds later, 100 yards behind, another bump. And then, for heaven's sake, a third, even smaller bump was there. A whole family, Daddy, Mother, and the wee one in the rear. So how might it be possible after thousands of years that Nessie or her ancestors ever existed? Scientists say they have a possible answer. Loch Ness was formed in the last ice age. Whatever was in the sea was trapped. It's the largest freshwater lake in Britain, 23 miles long and so deep, 800 feet deep, sonar tells us, with countless underwater caves. No human diver has yet to reach the bottom or even try to search the caves. And yet, not far from the Arctic Circle, the dark waters of Loch Ness never freeze. Safe habitat for reclusive monsters. Even famed oceanographer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, has had a go at her. No luck. Then about 10 years ago, an anchor covered in clay was brought up from the loch. In the clay was a clamshell. Was it discarded from someone's lunch? Experts say it is a marine shell, a genuine marine deposit. But Loch Ness is freshwater, not saltwater. So how did a seashell get into a freshwater lake? Radiocarbon dates it as 14,000 years old, the same time of the last ice age when the North Sea merged with the loch. And so the mystery remains. But to Emma of Normandy, no mystery would it be. No, never. She would have looked at Loch Ness as both a bonny lake and a monster's lair. Like the old lady who lived above the lake, who seemed to speak for everyone from Vikings to us 21st century sophisticates. If the legend of Nessie is proved true or false, she said, it cannot make a difference, but it is a lovely story, isn't it? In his book, The Dragons of Eden, famed astrophysicist Carl Sagan wrote, "The dragons can still be heard hissing and rasping, and the dinosaurs thunder still." So might still there be dragons? Many myths are based on truths, for caves are deep in our memory, and hope still glimmers for those, like Queen Emma, who believe.
We invite you to share Stones and Bones with those who love history, those who love all things medieval and Viking, those who love all things royal and especially those who love stories of strong and influential women in history. Please like and share the Stones and Bones podcast on your social media. Next time on Stones and Bones, young Emma of Normandy will wonder why she ever came to England.